Hi y'all, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If it's your first time here, thanks so much for stopping by. My name is Lori Livers. I know it looks like livers, but it sounds like livers. And my channel is all about how I am using rental properties to create almost completely passive income for myself and my family. It's about DIY home improvement because that's something I really enjoy. And it's also about planning and organizing because I think planning and organizing makes all of those other things possible. I'm really excited about all of these things and I hope you're interested as well. Please do hit that subscribe button down below and ring the bell so you can be notified of all the new videos coming your way. I'd love to have you hang out for a few minutes. Today's video is about the second R in the BRRRR strategy. The BRRRR strategy is the one I'm using to grow my rental portfolio. And the second R stands for rent. For me, I love this aspect of the process because this is the piece that creates the cash flow. Cash flow is why I got into this to start with. So this is a really important part of the process. All the pieces are pretty important, but this is one that doesn't take a lot of time. It's really simple to do, and it's the one that brings the money to the bank. So let's get started. If I am in the process of renting a brand new property, I will put it up for rent, and what I mean by put it up for rent is I will list it on Zillow, and I will put a sign in the yard about a week before my rehab is done. If I do it any earlier in the process, the rehab is just too incomplete for potential tenants to really see how they would live in the house. And if I do it any later in the process, I could be sitting with a house that's completely rehabbed and nobody's living in it. I don't want either of those situations. So I have found that right about a week before the rehab is completed is the right time to list the property on Zillow and put a sign in the yard. If it's a property that I've already had rented, I put it on Zillow 30 days before the lease is going to terminate, and I put a sign in the yard 30 days before the lease is going to terminate. 30 days is a long time to have a sign in the yard, but in the case where I already have a tenant living in the house, I need as much time as possible to schedule potential tenants' viewing of the property in a way that's convenient for them. That's something that's really important to me is I want my tenants to live in the homes comfortably right up to the very last day that they live in the home. And having people walk through your house to see if they want to live there next can be kind of awkward. That's why it's important to me to leave some time for the current tenant to be comfortable with the process and to get as many prospective tenants through the door as possible before the house is vacated by the current tenant. I use Zillow to list my properties for rent. And I do this because it's a far-reaching site. Just about everybody who's looking for a rental house has heard of Zillow. They have commercials everywhere. If you watch anything on HGTV, you're going to see a Zillow commercial. And it's free. It's free for property owners to list their properties for rent. I also just put a sign in the yard, and I have found that within usually just a few hours of listing the property on Zillow and putting a sign in the yard, the phone starts to ring. When the phone starts ringing, I, of course, answer it and just answer any questions that the potential tenants might have about the property. The most common things that people ask about when they call is how big is the house, how much is the deposit, what is the rent, and can they bring their pet? So I just go through those details with them, and then I set up a time to show the house. Now, I don't show this house individually to one person after another. I set up 2 times to show a house in a week. And I try to set one up for the early evening, like maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock during the week, because this gives people time to get off work, come over to the house and view the property. And then I set up a second time on a weekend, usually a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon, but not both. And I do that for people who can't get through the house during the week. In my experience, I have not had to show the house more than these 2 times, but I invite everybody who calls who is happy with the details that I've given them when I've answered their questions to come by and view the property at one of these times. My reason for this is that it's convenient for me. I have as many people as possible come through the house all at one time, so I don't have to keep running back and forth to the house to show it. And it also lets other people know that there's more than one person interested in this house. It creates a kind of scarcity effect in a tenant's mind. And so if they're really interested in the house, in leasing the house, then they'll act quickly to move on in the process. When I list my house for rent, I know the going rent price, average rent price for a neighborhood that I've invested in. I did that research when I was considering buying the property. So I know what I'm working with number-wise. I usually add at least $100 to $200 more to that base average price rent for that neighborhood. The reason I do this is because I know I have rehabbed that home well. I know I'm providing a quality product to the tenant, and so I'm not afraid to ask for top dollar. In my mind, the worst thing that can go wrong is that I set the rent price too high. I don't rent the house, I lower it, and I rent the house at a lower price. I've never had that happen. In fact, when I leased my first house, I set my rent price $195 higher than the average for the neighborhood. I only had the house listed for about 3 hours when an agent called me and told me that I am out of my mind, that I was never going to get that price, that that neighborhood just does not bring that price. She had a potential tenant who was very interested in the house, but didn't want to pay that top dollar rent price. And I thanked her for her time and kind of thought about it and thought, I'm just going to wait and see. I'm going to wait and see what happens. So not the next day, but the day after, or day 3 after I listed the house for rent, I had a signed lease, a security deposit, and the first month's rent collected for my top dollar price. I did not call her back and tell her, hey, I got that number you said I would never ever get. And since then, I've leased the house again at that same top dollar price. I like to think of myself as somebody who doesn't say I told you so, but I kind of guess I am saying, told you I could get it. And I did, but whatever. Once I get home and I'm reviewing all the applications, I start with the number 1 application, and if it meets all the guidelines that I'm looking for in a potential tenant, then I will give them a call and I will invite them to move on in the application process. And in my process, what this means is I send them a link where they can enter all their personal information, and they will pay a $35 fee, and that provides me with a state and federal background check. It provides me with a credit report, and it provides verification of the details, like the income details and residency details that they've provided in their initial application. If for any reason the first applicant, the one that I tagged number 1, isn't interested in moving on in the process, then I'll move on with the second one. And if they meet the criteria, invite them to do the same application. And then I would just move through numbers 1 through 4, 5, whatever, however many it takes, until I have somebody who is interested in the property and wants to move on in the process of leasing the house. In my experience, my first applicant has always moved on in the process. I think if people are willing to provide all those kinds of details when they view the property, it's a pretty solid bet that that stuff is going to check out. I've only had one instance where it didn't, and in that instance, I ended up leasing to the house to the number 2 person. They got theirs turned in second. So I haven't had a lot of challenges or issues around this, and from what I understand, most people don't. So that's been great for me. So once the applicant has gone online, paid their fee, and had all the information sent over to me, then I am ready to move on with completing the lease, collecting the first month's rent, and collecting the security deposit. So I have a standard Texas lease. All of my homes are listed in Texas, and so I have a standard Texas lease. I just complete all the information that's required of the lease, and I send it over to them for a digital signature. I don't keep any paper files. When we get to the organizing part of my channel, you'll see that I don't keep any paper files. It's fantastic. I don't like paper clutter. But anyway, back to the rental process. I send them a digital copy of the lease to collect a digital signature, and then I send them an invoice where they can electronically pay their first month's rent and their security deposit. Once the lease is signed and both that first month's rent invoice and the security deposit invoice are paid, then we set a date to turn over the keys. On move-in day, or often the evening before, I will meet my new tenant at the house, and we will walk through the house and we will discuss the condition of the house, and we'll complete a conditional report. I will also remind them how to get a hold of me, that text is best. and make sure any questions they have about the property or any questions they have about expectations moving forward are fully addressed. I want to make sure I give them all the information they need to feel comfortable, and then I get out of their way. They have a house to live in, I have a tenant. From that point forward, unless they reach out to me with any problems, concerns, or just any general questions, I really try to leave them alone. I'm not somebody that's driving by my houses often. I'm not somebody who is calling to check in. I don't do any of those things. I feel like I go through the process of screening the tenants well, and I feel like I provide a really quality home for them to live in. And I think when you invest that time doing those things up front, the rest is where it gets really passive. And that's the part I really enjoy, because this is the piece of the process that allows for the passive and passive income that I so enjoy about my rental portfolio. That's what allows me to live the life I want and not the life I thought I had to live. I hope all of this has been interesting to you. I really enjoy this process, and I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button down below and come along with me and learn more about why I'm using these rental properties to create this almost completely passive income. The next video on the BRRRR strategy is going to be on the refi piece, and that's going to be pretty interesting. This was the part that really made all of the rest of this available to me. I didn't know it worked this way, and I'm wondering if a lot of people don't know how available this really is to them. It is so much easier than what I ever would have guessed it could be. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing all that information with you. So please do hit subscribe, come along with me, ring the bell so that you'll be notified when the new videos come out. And until then, bye y'all. Is this just too high? At least you're not looking up my nose. I can't figure it out. Being a new YouTuber is harder than you would have thought, but it's fun.